Most people nowadays get their music via the internet from Spotify, iTunes. They don't physically buy music anymore.
People nowadays with their downloads, when they meet the person of their dream in 10 years' time, what are they going to do? Show each other their files.
For me, I haven't lost it since we were young. I love that walking through the records.
Well, record shops was a networking kind of scenario. Even in Cork, we had that a little bit with Comet Records and stuff, right? Yeah. People used to go in there to have a chat and find out what was going on. So it has that community kind of vibe to it, right?
Yeah. It's really important, you know, with all these cities and towns that lose these record stores, they lose that connection with live music. Saturdays are my favourite day of the week. I get to hang out with my little daughter. My partner works, so I do daddy daycare for the day. We just hang out. We go to the markets, we go to the pool, and we make our weekly visit to Utopia Records in the city. I've been a musician for 7 or 8 years in Ireland when I came to Australia in '96, and I think Utopia Records was a bit of a connection to that time and place in my life, really, you know. I've always loved record stores. I think it goes back to, you know, as a child, my dad's record collection. Accessing music was very difficult growing up. I used to have to make a 3-hour trip to Dublin to Tommy Tighe's Sound Cellar in Dublin, which was the only place you could actually buy heavy metal music. Ever since then, everywhere I go, if I go on holidays, anywhere I go, I'm always sussing out a CD shop, a record store, whether it's a second-hand one or indie, or that's why I treasure Utopia so much. It's, you know, if we had one of those in Ireland when I was young, I mean, oh my God.
I mean, I first walked into the store in 1979 as a 14-year-old kid, so this store is a very big part of my life, you know. Frequented the shop a lot in the early 80s, where I met a lot of, you know, Sydney's better known, well, they weren't at the time, they were just other kids, but we all kind of became the better known people in the Sydney heavy metal scene, and Utopia was definitely the meeting place, you know, before any clubs or venues or anything. This was where, if you liked heavy metal, you came, you know. People don't realise it, but we've always sold punk here as well. And, you know, Ray from the Hard-Ons is like a legendary punk guy that works here.
Oh, I used to be a customer here back in the early 80s when I was in high school. I was always wanting to work in a record store because, you know, people who play in bands or play in a band tend to drift into, you know, retail because, well, people who play in bands tend to not drift into roles like hostage negotiators, or, you know what I mean? There's a terrorist on that building with 20 hostages, and we need you to get. Sorry, I got a gig. I started working in record stores in '94 when the Hard-Ons broke up, and I ended up here in October '99. Next year will be my 20th year. You know, I didn't think that I would be here for that long, but it's actually a testament to how fun it is to work here.
The anthropology side of the heavy metal fan and the punk fan is very, very loyal, and, you know, loves buying their music, loves supporting their bands.
Both those genres of music always attracted outsiders of the box, outside thinkers, outside, you know, like some people might like Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, Boston's first album, and Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. But they're good with that. They never really take it any further. But other people, the outsiders, go, I'm going to delve deeper into this, you know. Okay, I know about Slipknot and Van Halen and Def Leppard and Judas Priest and Slayer. Now I want to dig deeper and find out what really connects with me. I mean, we have people that don't even like any of the big bands. They only buy underground stuff, or only one genre speaks to them and that's the only one they buy. But there's room for everyone to fit into this shop.
For you, you're still an active musician and in an iconic Australian band, the Hard-Ons. Could you just give us a bit of a background on how the band started and how you met the lads?
The three of us in the original Hard-Ons met in 1975 in primary school. We didn't really become good friends until probably 1979, you know, a few years later, when punk exploded and everyone was basically into new wave and punk. Everyone was just obsessed with it. The band was never the flavour of the month. The band was not... It was a strange band. When we first started, the drummer was a black guy who sang. The bass player was Oriental. Then you had the guitar player who was white. So it just wasn't your classic four-piece punk band. You know what I mean? It was no Generation X. It was no Sex Pistols. You know, it wasn't even the Ramones. It was a kind of like a weird band, but somehow people liked us, and I reckon people liked us because we were different to other bands, and we were obsessed with hard rock. So our music had a lot of hard rock influences in it. So it made us sound a little bit different to other punk bands.
My first band became Mask, and that was a very glammy band. Basically, Mask and Starlet, my two glam bands, I really set out to outdo the New York Dolls. I wanted to look more like a girl with a dick than anyone, because I thought that was just as extreme as being as heavy as possible. Like, I loved the heavy stuff, but I even wanted to piss off my mates. In the early 90s, some guys approached me that were in quite a heavy band called Killswitch. And then for the next 3 years, we kind of toured the country. We put out a few EPs. And for a while there, we were one of Australia's more prominent heavy metal bands.
You know, the heavy metal and punk scene it's thriving. It's going against the norm of the other genres of music. What are your thoughts, and where do you think it is going, or how do you feel about the whole?
Well, I guess it's going a lot of directions very quickly. You know, obviously downloading iTunes, all the legal stuff, when that first hit, that had a massive hit on the market. But then, you know, as it developed and then everyone started offering their own services, and then Spotify, obviously a lot of people don't buy anything anymore. I would suggest there's people that are never going to walk back into a record store, but for every 10 of them, there's one person that's going to walk down those stairs and go, hey, what's all this stuff? And get enamored with it and fall in love with it. And, you know, the world is becoming a very, very big place with a lot of people. So I think there's going to be room for everything.
Where do you see it going? Or, you know, you're a vinyl guy, obviously. Every time I come in here, you're cleaning some
records.
sort of record, or you
You
love your vinyl. So
well, I do. Yeah. Well, I actually don't have a strong opinion on where the record industry is going, because I've got so many things to do, practically speaking, from day to day, working in a record shop. So I don't clean up an old Van Halen record behind the counter and then stop to think, I wonder if I'm going to be doing this next year. I don't think that. I just go, man, that mold is really hard to get off. You know what I mean? So I haven't really got too many strong opinions on where the music industry is going, but I will say one thing. You know, the really basic questions that I have to ask is, are people going to stop liking music? And the answer is probably no. Will the production line of good bands stop? And the answer is probably no. Will technology get to the point where it will destroy people's love of music? The answer is probably no. Now, if you apply that to not the love of music but the industry, will the technology, will situations destroy the music industry? The answer is probably could be possibly yes. But when you work in a heavy metal retail store, you can't not be an optimist. It's just part and parcel of the thing. For example, who listens to heavy metal? The working classes, right? If you have a festival, it's heavy metal that will draw the biggest crowds. Why is it that Radiohead will be more revered in the industry than Judas Priest, yet it's Rob Halford that has his own bar with a life-size statue in Berlin, not Tom York? You know, imagine going to a Tom York bar in Belfast. What I'm saying is, it's really weird that heavy metal and hard rock is so phenomenally popular, but yet it's still outside of music somehow. How could Judas Priest play in front of 100,000 people in the desert in America somewhere, and yet still be considered, well, kind of obscure?
Most people that I spoke to, it's their older brothers or a friend's older brother puts them onto what they listen to at a young age, you know. Your brother, what was the first records you were listening with him, and what was your first record that you bought yourself?
My older brother was a big influence on my music life, not so much him himself as a person, but just the records that he brought into our house. I still remember to this day, and he ended up giving it to me. He came home with a single, which was Deep Purple, Speed King on one side and Black Knight on the other. And if they're still not my two favourite songs to this day, they're very close.
Excellent.
Got a bit teary then.
Excellent, that's cool, man. That's this music, that's what I find anyway.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, the senses, you hear a song certain places.
I'm real emotional. That's why I don't get into films. I cried in Cool Runnings when the bobsled team crashed. You know, I cry in comedies.
My very first cassette was probably in 75. It must have been 75. That was a greatest hits, Beatles greatest hits cassette. And my first ever long player was Rock and Roll Over by Kiss, and that was 1976. Yeah, so it's still, to this day, I've still got the record. The cassette I don't have. I mean, who cares about cassettes, right? Unless you're a hipster.
First tape, I do remember that. It was actually Van Halen 2.
Very cool.
I think I was 11 when I bought it.
The first record I got was Tin Lizzy, Whiskey in the Jar.
I remember our first tape was, I think, The Police, Brigade de Blanc, I think it was. And that was like shared between me and my brother because tapes were expensive and we a tape recorder, we didn't have a record player.
I do go back to the past, I do go back and listen to old stuff and old music that makes me feel alive.
But it was great when we bought Hannah, she's my eldest, the record player, because I pulled up my music and went, oh my God, it's like there's stuff in there I'd completely forgotten about, you know, like the Birthday Party, you know, which was the early band of Nick Cave, back, you know, that was like 30 years ago.
I don't know if you've noticed, but when it gets towards record store day and we do our posts, I tell people to go and check out all my favourite stores as well.
Yeah.
You know, because Sydney has a great history of great record stores. There's not many of us left, so I want to help all my friends stay in business. You know?
Yeah. My thing was my daughter and myself. She's only she's 2 next week.
Yeah.
I was looking after her on Saturdays, and we go in there, and they all got to, like, they're such cool lads. They all got to know her, and they treat her well. But I was just the whole family thing. You just brought it up. Just every Saturday when I'm in there, I love it. There's dads in there with the daughters. There's families and full families, like, you know, 5, 6 kids, and all this love of us getting excited talking about music when we do, and you know, like, oh God, look at this album. That was, you know.
Well, we've got I live in Wollongong, and we've got down there a place called Music Farmers, and they do pretty much all vinyl. Yeah. And that's now my son's favourite shop.
Excellent.
So he went in there.
Good name for a shop.
Oh, it's great.
The formats nowadays, how are you getting your music now? How do you listen to it?
Well, that's a massive question, isn't it? It's all about streaming now. It's a funny thing because streaming makes it easier to consume, but it makes it harder for bands to progress, right? So now it's all about a single. you're not getting paid that much for singles these days. There's no money like for the for the artists in streaming, so you have to make your money some other way. So it's all social media now. So it's totally changed. Like what we used to think of as a band 20 years ago is not what it is now, and it's good. There's good and bad to it, I guess.
With heavy metal, it's there's always that sense of this is my music.